So when I talk about frequency, it's hard not to talk about the law of affinity, that the scientific aspect of that, and that has to do with basically, when you boil it down, it's like attracts like. Okay, so in other words, like things will attract like things, and then once those two things are attracted to each other, to stay together, they have to actually resonate. They begin to have sympathetic resonance, is what it's called. In other words, the waves actually begin to harmonize and move together at the same level. Okay, now let's talk about that a little bit, right? So people are right when they say to me, "Hey, don't get all caught up in those politics. It's low vibing. You don't want to get on that level." They're right. When you get on a low frequency level, you pull yourself down to that level. And then even if you're not on that level normally, you will start to experience negative things that go along with being on a lower frequency level. And let me give this to you simply, right? I mean, you walk in the door and somebody comes up to you and they're angry and they're mean and they're talking to you rudely, okay? You are going to be affected by this. Now, you could be maybe just slightly affected by it because you say to yourself, this energy stinks and I'm out of here, which is what you should say. But some people say, for instance, that person is your boss or a family member. Can't really get away from them, right? So then what you're stuck in is you're stuck with this frequency that you're going to begin to resonate with, which is lower than yours. It's going to make you feel bad. So, how do you deal with that? Now, the way you deal with that is, one, you limit it, okay? As much as possible, say you have difficulty with your mom or a certain person in your life, you limit the amount of interaction you actually have with them. In other words, you do what needs to be done, and then that's it. You know, you listen to their gallbladder issue for 10 minutes, and then I gotta go. You do that because you need to protect yourself. You can only give so much before you start losing your own happiness. So you have to be very careful with that. And you really have to do thorough cleaning in your life. I hate to say it, but sometimes you turn around and the people you've collected in your life, whether they're friends or boyfriends or whatnot, are not good for you. They're not a good energy, and that energy is pulling you down. And then you have to do one of the hardest things, which is change, right? Because that's kind of like basic the law of inertia, right? Because things tend to want to keep going the way they're going, right? So things in motion tend to stay in motion, things at rest tend to stay at rest. Well, things going in one direction tend to keep wanting to go in that direction. So it's very hard to change. But you have to know that your life depends on that. Because if you're with a low frequency person and they're making you unhappy, you're going to be unhappy. And that's not going to change unless you change it, unless you get away from that person and you focus on making your energy really good and happy. And so how do you do that? That's the next question. How do I go from a bad, yucky frequency to a happy frequency? And this is how you do it. My number one go-to: nature. Nature is incredible. If you are just feeling like I'm not going to make it, get out in nature. Nature will completely lift your frequency. It's absolutely divine. The Mayans thought God lived in the tree, but whatever you have to think about that, we all know what it feels like when you go out in nature and all of a sudden you're hearing the birds and the wind's rustling through the leaves, and it's just amazing. And it's one of the highest frequency things we can do, and we forget about it because it seems so simple. So if you're not feeling good, my first suggestion to you right away, get outside.